I mean, Ray, you cannot miss an opening. So what have you been up to? Well, I wrote to Boris.
Welcome to the How to Raise Money podcast for anyone who wants to raise other people's money for a business or property venture. Right now, there has never been more money on the planet, and there has never been more opportunity. This podcast will help you put the two together. So, if you need money for your business or property proposals from banks, lenders, angels, whales or dragons, this is the podcast for you.
Yeah, so what's been happening this week? Well, I wrote to Boris.
As you do.
Well, there was something it was on Twitter, I think it was, and it was, contact the Prime Minister, if you've got any suggestions, concepts, complaints, blah, 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 blah. And here was a link, so I clicked on the link, and then it gives you his email address, and it gives you the opportunity to chat to him. Well, send him an email.
Oh, yeah.
I send him an email and immediately get one saying, if he's not your constituency MP, this will not be actioned. You need to write to your constituency MP, and here's how you find it. Put your postcode in here and it'll tell you who it is. So just had to basically cut and paste and send that to him instead. And saying,
I thought you were going to say you put in the postcode of where he's MP.
Well, I don't know where he is MP, but anyway, I just followed the links and I sent it to my local MP, Sir Edward somebody or other.
Okay.
And got the usual, thank you for your communication, we'll be back in touch, and haven't heard anything since. So I'm going to do my usual second request, third request, and keep chipping away. And
the contents of the email?
Contents of the email were essentially that there are millions of businesses, they reckon it's something like 2 million businesses that have been left behind, that have not been caught in the net, as it were. And it was on behalf of those businesses making a few suggestions, one of them being that the government steps in with a loan hibernation scheme. Because many of these companies, as you will know, lenders borrow money from the money markets at 1% or 0.75 or whatever it is, very, very minuscule rates, and then they farm that money out for as much as they can get. So if they are standard mortgage companies, then that doesn't apply. But if it's a commercial loan, usually it's 3 above base or 4 above base or 5 above base or whatever.
Or LIBOR
or LIBOR, depending which one they choose. And at the moment, that's minuscule. So the 4, 5, 6 above is what they get as their profit.
Yep.
Which is fine, no one's denying them a profit. However, as companies are unable to make a profit, as companies are even unable to make anything, it only seems right and fair that there should be some kind of hibernation scheme until we get back to tier 2, is how I put it.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. Is this, because you kind of look at it and you think to yourself, there's going to be a massive bill. What's the way of making that bill as small as possible? And how do we help as fewer people as possible? That means everyone else can keep going as long as possible. And yeah.
Well, if you think about it, if a company employs people and they furlough them, they're effectively being paid to do nothing, just to sit around and wait.
Well, the rules used to be that you could definitely do nothing. You were ineligible for furlough if you went home and then they asked you to do something. Mm-hmm. The problem with the scheme, in some respects, is it's almost paying you to shut down when you probably could have kept going a bit longer, because the company's going to look at it and go, do you know what? We might as well have our staff costs covered. And a few of us that don't furlough will try and keep the thing going.
Yeah.
Whereas potentially it could have been, no, actually do a bit from home. So it would have been great if you could have done half furlough, half working, and had a bit of flexibility in there, because I do think business owners would have been, the vast majority would have been honest and fair. I think the people that are going to be fraudulent and make bogus claims and all the rest of it, well, they were always going to do it. And you were never going to stop it with whatever scheme it is. But I think, it's a shame that there isn't that element of flexibility. I know they tried to do it and say, right, okay, if you're working part-time, you can do it. But right from the off, I think they should have said, if you can work from home rather than furlough, let's do a part and part.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the one thing I'm kind of cognizant of, there's another big word for the morning, cognizant.
Can you spell it?
To understand something is, you get a government minister gets wheeled out and then they get questions thrown at them. And if they don't know the answer, it's like, why don't you know the answer? And they're saying, well, I don't have that information to hand just yet. But why not? You're the government. You're the man that's supposed to have that information. And I don't understand why some of them don't say, well, actually, the situation is so fast moving. Any information I give you will be out of date. So why don't you give me 24 hours and I'll give you the information you're asking for today, but I'll give it to you tomorrow. And then tomorrow I'll have to give you information, the next day. That's how it should work. But instead they get absolutely slagged and berated for not knowing something.
Yeah, I mean, they should turn around to the interviewer and say, you see that control deck over there? What's that fourth button on the right do? What do you mean you don't know? What do you mean? Are you just, and it's crazy, isn't it, to expect people to know absolutely everything. A minister's brief is enormous.
Exactly.
Absolutely enormous. And that's why you've got Whitehall, really, because you've got to have some consistency behind the scenes that actually knows an awful lot more about what's going on.
Indeed. And lots of, I was chatting with an actuary. Do you know what an actuary is?
I do. They're the people that make accountants look interesting.
Indeed.
Yes, I used to do a lot of actuarial stuff back in my days as an accountant and insurance. So triangulation and all that sort of stuff. Yes. Anyway, for those that don't, Ray, give us your potted summary of an actuary.
Well, I would say the actuary that I'm describing is a chap or chapess, man or woman, who works for an insurance company and works out risk ratios. So in other words, they use tables and calculations to decide what they're going to charge somebody for their car insurance, for example, or life insurance or home insurance or whatever it happens to be. And obviously, the more risk there is, the higher you have to pay. And they can also pretty accurately work out how many people will die in a given year from a given action. So whether it's accidents.
I mean, they study data and they look at the trends and they look at the claims histories and they look at the causes of those and then factor it in. Huge complications. I know the actuarial exams are incredibly difficult to pass because I think, and they'll love this stat, 83.2% of people actually fall asleep taking the exam. And this is one of the major reasons for it. And I got that from a top actuary.
Oh, well, talking of a top actuary, I was chatting to a top actuary a while ago, actually. I met him on a plane and we had a great conversation and he was telling me all these statistics and I was quite fascinated by it, the number of people that were going to die from car crash and accidents. And then he said,
those long winter evenings simply fly by, don't they?
They absolutely did. It was great. The flight was over in an instant. We kept in touch. But he said that one of the most interesting statistics, I think he said at the time, was that this year, not this year, but with the year I was talking to him, 2 people would die in the UK being struck by lightning. And I said, and he went, and it's really irritating. It's really annoying. I said, why is it irritating and annoying? He says, because I don't know who the 2 are.
I thought you were going to say because they're not the 2 that I want.
Well, probably. He was an actuary with a sense of humour. Anyway, somebody asked me a question earlier on in the week. I was doing, last week, Wednesday, I was on a Zoom call with Business Masterclass Academy. It's a selection of business owners, wide variety of business owners, and they come together in a Zoom call and all have a chat about business and trends and who's doing what and looking for advice and that sort of thing. And one of them said, surely, he said, that the insurance companies, the big insurance companies, own a lot of high street property. And they were going to lose a lot of money this year because businesses would be unable to pay rents. And it would probably be devastating for them. And I said, I don't think so. I don't think that they hold that much commercial property in the great scheme of things. And I mean, it might seem a lot to us, but in their portfolio of trillions, it's probably not that much. So I thought I'd find out. So I phoned up my actuarial friend and I said, I have a question for you. What number? And it was 1.97%.
I'm glad he gave a rough guess.
Less than 2%. Oh, he knew. Oh, yeah, of course they did. Off the top of his head as well. Didn't have to even look it up, but just as soon as I asked him. Now, he said that he works for a number of insurance companies, not one in particular. They seem to be hired guns, I think, spread across. And the idea being that no one insurance company will ever really leap ahead of another because they have superior knowledge. And I asked him about that, and I said, how come, you sort of work across the board? He said, well, one thing you've got to understand is the insurance company in the UK is one of the oldest in the world. In fact, it was the first, and talked about Lloyd's of London and how they all got together to insure ships and all this sort of carry on. And he said, so we've got vast amounts of experience, and they have war-gamed virtually every scenario, right down to almost the last penny as to what it might cost them and how they spread the risk. And if you happen to be a property owner in Wisconsin, USA, and you're paying your property insurance, Lloyd's of London probably get a piece of that. So it's a massive. So it's literally trillions of dollars they're dealing with right across the globe.
Yep.
A lot of it centralised in Lloyd's of London, which is a massive organisation. So he said, so whilst we seem to hold billions of dollars of property, which we do, or the companies do, it's only a very small part of their portfolio, probably less than 2%, right across the board. So he quoted the 1.97% for the one company that we spoke about, but he said right across the board, it's not big. It's not a big part of it. So we then got chatting a little bit further whilst I had him on the phone. And I said, and I'm not going to name him, obviously, or name his company, but I said to him, well, you must be, if you're losing money on one end, you must be making it at the other. He said, how do you mean? I said, well, elderly people dying, and you're no longer having to pay out pensions and things. And it actually had been in the press about the companies and how much money they were saving per month from not having to pay out insurance policies. So he said, the insurance industry is just swings and roundabouts. It's just all swings and roundabouts. That's why we're across so many different sectors. He said, because one will be massively affected and the other will make a fortune and won't cost us anything. So yeah. I thought that was quite interesting.
Careful. Now, I've just been handed a piece of paper. Earlier we quoted some statistics, and this note on the piece of paper says apparently 62.73% of all statistics are made up. So just bear that in mind, folks, whenever we're quoting things. But I remember being in the office, and the actuary, who was an American guy, he was a really, really funny guy, but with a dry, slow sense of humor sort of thing. And all of a sudden, he leapt up and punched the air and went, God damn it, yes! And because he'd kind of moved in a sudden and unexpected way for an actuary and B, for him, we sort of sauntered over to his side of the office and sort of said, what's happened? He said, they're dead. And he was kind of, who? What? Oh my goodness, I'm really sorry to hear that. No, you don't realize. And this was the late 90s. And he said, they're dead. That means we can close the book. And we said, who's dead? What book? What has rattled your cage? And the last surviving dependent of some dreadful illness-related workers' compensation scheme from 1924 or something. The last person had just died, which meant that they could close all their insurance and actuarial books on it, and they were no longer paying out on that particular fund. And I thought, yeah, there you go, folks. If you want to know what makes an actuary tick or explode with joy, it's when some poor 90-year-old lady pops her clogs. So there you go.
Good grief. Well, it's no wonder they've changed the whole annuity thing, and they've changed the whole pension structure from final salary and all the rest of it. It's because of, and then this is something else that came out of the conversation, the top-down pyramid. The top-down pyramid, which is, it used to be that you had 7 workers for every retired person.
It looked like a Christmas tree. It looked like a Christmas tree, didn't it? And now It looks like a bastardized Christmas tree from the bargain bin of the B&Q, couldn't sell it, fell off a pallet, got crushed, rolled over, kicked into a corner, and then stood upright again. That's how the Christmas tree looks these days.
Well, it's
not good.
Christmas tree shape now, is it? It's the other way. The other way around. But yeah, there's some crazy statistics out there that are completely unsustainable. The number of workers to support each retired person is just not sustainable.
And the Chinese example with the social policy making in the 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, they've realised now what an absolute problem they've got.
Although one-child policy, yeah. Yeah,
because you had two parents and one child. So you've literally reversed the Christmas tree. You've stuck it in upside down, which is a frightening situation.
Consequences rears its ugly head once again.
You try to do things for the right reason, and you have unintended consequences.
Yep. And the unintended consequences of not preparing for a podcast.
I know, Ray. I'm all sorted here. It's you that's letting the side down.
We did have a couple of guests lined up, but they've had to boot it into touch because of the timing of the thing. So so we don't have them.
So basically, folks, it's a ramble.
It is a ramble, but sometimes the rambles are the best. That's where sometimes ordinarily the gems might come out.
I tell you what. Here's an interesting thing. When I used to do the insurance, it was insurance for car warranties. Was one part of it. It was part of General Motors, and one part of the thing that we did was we used to do the car warranty. So if you go out and buy a second-hand car or you get the car warranty, if say you got a policy and it would be, I don't know, let's say £450 to get a couple of years worth of cover on your vehicle for various things. There were two things that came out of it that I thought were amazing. One was there was a chap there called Steve, another great guy. Actually, they were all terrific people. But he had a book, and he had the definitive book of how long it should take to do any repair job anywhere, any car, any garage, sort of thing, and all the tools you needed and everything. So we could work out what the claims would be for certain failures. And that book was gold, as my fellow accountant, Julie, disappeared off down to the garage with a problem on her car. And the guy sort of took one look at it and said, oh, yeah, it's this. And she went, oh, how much is that going to be? And he disappeared off. He came back and he said, oh, just over 1,000. And she went, oh, right, hold on a sec. And we were only about a mile away from this garage. She drove back, picked out the book, got the job that he just said it needed doing, photocopied the page, drove back down to the garage to the service department and said, no, about this service thing, are you sure about that? He said, yeah. And she got this piece of paper and slammed it down and said, well, how do you explain this? Don't you ever try and rip me off or I will rip your head off. She was quite a nice, placid accountant in there. But in terms of the car warranties, so we knew how long every job would take. And it would be things like 18 minutes to do this, 2 hours, 20 minutes to do that job, and all the rest of it. But the other thing that was amazing, on a £450 policy, what do you think the insurance risk premium, which was the bit that we were dealing with, what do you think that was out of 450 quid?
50 quid.
How much?
50.
I think we used to get anything from 23 to 32 quid. and the rest of it was everybody else making a margin. So the people that resold it, who resold it to them, who resold it to them, who resold it to them. So in your 450 quid policy, well over £400 was nothing to do with the actual insurance. It was all the margin. And that, do you remember, that is why there was the big thing, when you bought your telly and they sold you the extended warranty.
Extended warranty, yeah.
It's because the risk premium would be about £5, and their commission would be about 200 quid.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. But there you go. You might think that's crazy, but that's where the actuaries came in, who said, actually, if we stick that risk premium in here, invest it at this, the claims payouts will come in 18 months time on average, and they'd have graphs and everything. That's when we need our money, and that invested correctly would produce enough to make us a profit on that particular book of business. So
fascinating stuff.
There you go. I tell you what, hey, isn't it amazing what we know?
I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you did that. The actually part on car warranties and stuff.
I tried to
podcast episode on that.
I know. I tried to avoid all of it. And yeah, I used to just yeah. I think towards the end, looking back, I reckon I am definitely now totally unemployable. And looking back, I was probably unemployable for a lot longer than I thought, because I was a rotten employee. Because I just want everything to be good, so I would tell people when they were going wrong, and I didn't play office politics. I was never very good at office politics, because yeah, I would just generally point out that is, well, you know. What I'm thinking is, as you explain that to me, that you are displaying a fundamental lack of understanding of the situation or your role or what this company is meant to do. Now, when you say that to fairly senior people, you don't tend to stay in that job for very long, do you?
Well, the fundamental part of this podcast is how to raise money. We need to be talking about how to raise money. So
yeah.
People out there, the couple of million businesses out there that are looking to raise money is we're looking for solutions for them. I am talking to people on ways that more funds can be accessed, because well, the lenders and banks all seem to have turned their attention to Corona Business Interruption Loan and bounce backs and all the other bits and pieces, and seem to have neglected everything else, which is causing one or two challenges. I
see they're extending the repayment terms, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
Up to 10 years now, is it?
Yeah, and I think the first repayments are due in March, but it seems that they might be delayed. They might be hibernated, Simon.
Well,
Simon?
What the?
Nigel, you might edit that bit out.
Edit it out. I think
his name.
Edit it out. I'm gonna flipping it open with that.
I gave away the actuary's name. Oh no, people will be able to track him down now.
Yeah, because obviously there's only one actuary called Simon.
Yeah, well. Moving swiftly along.
Yeah, I tell you what, one of the things, and it's taken me ages to edit the episode, so this one will probably come out first, is that one with Stephen Kuhn, because there was so much in it, so many good snippets, and I want to kind of slightly reorder things, because we talked about things and then talked about it again, and I'm trying to get it sorted. But one of the things he said there was for his mergers and acquisitions and acquiring companies and dealing with people, we've just been able to have a conversation with them. And one of the things that I always notice about you, Ray, is the fact that it doesn't matter really what the situation is, who the person is. You have an amusing anecdote that fits in with it. And it's one of those things that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I find the youth of today, okay, so that's basically anyone under about 35 from our point of view, they don't really have the ability to do small talk. They have the ability to have a strop and say you're wrong and walk off the job. But the ability to just stand and just chit chat in a kind of quite amusing way or stroke interesting way, I think he's lost a bit. I don't know. What do you think? Because I do think being able to have a conversation, being able to have a chat, effectively, as if you were sat having a coffee or lent at the bar having a pint, or having a meal and a chat, you've got to be able to talk to people, haven't you?
I think they silo themselves too much. I mean, if you do manage to see a group together, they're nearly always buried in their phones. They're nearly always got their head in their phone. And that's because they want to chat to someone on the phone that they get along with. So if they come up against somebody that they don't quite gel with right away and the conversation stutters a bit, they have nowhere to go. They've got no experience to fall back on, which is a bit of a tragedy. So they'd much rather, dive into their phone. So I think, yeah, it is an issue, because the one thing, I mean, everything seems to be becoming polarized these days, whether that's, whether it's politics, if you look at referendums and everything, it's all polarized. It's either left or right, yes or no, in or out.
Right or wrong. Right or wrong. I'm right, you're wrong.
Exactly, that's it. And there seems to be no debate about it, which is a bit of a tragedy, because, not everyone is right all the time, and there are always three sides to every story. Your side, my side, and the truth of the story, which is usually an interpretation of both. So, yeah, and I find myself sometimes on social media, I'll make a statement or a comment or something like that, and lo and behold, they all come out the woodwork, and it's never a sort of, I think you're wrong there, here's why. It's usually, derogatory word, you're an idiot, or go educate yourself, or something like that. It's never sort of, well, actually, you have a point, but, it just seems to be straight in there for the jugular. And that seems to be the modus operandi of social media, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I do think when you are talking to someone, an investor, whoever it is, someone who's going to lend you money, someone who wants to be in a scheme, someone that you'd like to work with, you have got to be kind of interesting to them. You've got to be interested in them, but you've also got to be interesting to them. And I know a lot of people say, well, if I haven't got any money, how am I going to go out there and raise some money? Well, I think one of the things you've got to be is interested in them, but you've also got to have some life experience. So if you don't have life experience at the moment, try and get out and get some, and do those sort of things, because it's a very hard to have a conversation with an awful lot of younger people. So I've got over 100 staff, and some, will chat away forever and a day. Others, it's like getting blood from a stone at times.
Yeah. I'll share an anecdote from this week. I went into a shop, one of those mini supermarkets run by the big chains, the type. And, as well as all the lines on the floor and screens and masks and all this kind of carry on, we eventually got to the checkout. I was with my daughter, who's 13, and she, next to the checkout was a big box of Cadbury's cream eggs. The things, the size of a teaser, but they used to be the size of a tennis ball, that. Yeah. The same price. So she picked one up. She said, "Dad, can I get one of those?" And I always say to her, "How much is it?" I just want her to, I just want her to know the cost of things, and how much is it? And she said, "I don't know." And she turned to the woman and said, "How much is this?" And the woman said, 75p, right? And she said, "But you can get two for £1." So I said, "So that one's 75p, that one's 25p. I said, "I'll take the 25p one then." And the look on her face, it couldn't compute. She's like,
I thought you were going to say your daughter put it down, stormed off embarrassed. The shopkeeper rolled her eyes, threw you out, whilst you chuckled.
No, the person behind the till was clearly under 35 and couldn't compute.
Yeah.
I was looking for the button to allow me to buy the 25p cream egg. Meanwhile, my daughter was standing next to me and she was shaking her head. She was going, "Oh, Dad, you just don't get your sense of humour." She did right away. But I said, "Well, that's fair enough." I said, "If it's two for £1 and that one's 75p, I want the 25p one."
Yeah. Or buy two and sell one back.
Anyway, so I said to my daughter, I said, "Right, we'll do that again next time we come in. But this time, if there's an older person on, let's just see if they get it. Because I know you said it's my sense of humour and they wouldn't get it." She was like, "Right, okay." So we did it again a few days later. Yeah, we went in. And the older woman behind the counter, she started laughing. She said, "That's a good one." She said, "You're quite right." Yeah, she said, "Oh, your dad's quite smart, isn't he?" So my daughter was rolling her eyes again, like, "Oh, God, no."
Definitely an age thing.
Oh,
but there's the weird thing. When you were a kid, you looked at what your parents did and you thought, "Oh, goodness me,
I'm not doing that."
They are so unfunny. Yeah.
God, you're so old.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Well, there you go. So if you want to chip in to the Cadbury's cream egg purchase fund, please send your checks to How to Raise Money. Yeah.
Indeed. All right. Okay.
All right. So, Ray, before we go, have we got any more reviews? I ain't got my phone.
We've always got a few reviews. There's still 5-star reviews, which is good.
5-star reviews. Thank you, everyone.
Folk, if you are listening,
sharing. Yeah, keep sharing those reviews. Send it out. Let anyone know. If you know of someone interesting that you would like us to try and get on the show, let us know who and why, and we will try and get that. So that's hello@htrmoney.co.uk. The book, if you want to sign up for the book, I've got to tweak a bit on the website to keep those registrations flowing, because there was a bit of a glitch on there. But htrmoney.co.uk/book. And anything else, Ray?
No, I'm still trying to get a couple of bankers to come on. I've been talking to some senior guys in the bank, but nowadays they've all got everything. It's got to be passed by their PR department and all the rest of it. And I think if they listen to some back episodes,
we've had it. We've had it.
I'm not going on that podcast. You're kidding me. But, I want to put some home truths to them. I want to ask them, why are they still behaving like it's 2017? Why are they behaving as if nothing's wrong, nothing's changed? I've got a couple of alternative lenders who I've spoken to who've muttered that they might come on, but they're very sort of serious people and not terribly fluid. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, I'll invite them and we'll see how it goes. And if it doesn't work out, we'll have to just edit them out, I suppose.
Is that the whole purpose of getting them on? To ask them a question, then edit it, whereby we snip the words they say to say, it was I what done it.
No, I think that we're always going to have a podcast guest that you have on, and they're never any good, and the podcast episode never gets recorded, sees the light of day. It might be recorded, but it'll never see the light of day. No, I wouldn't edit their words. We wouldn't edit anybody. For those listening, we don't edit anybody's words out. But I would like to get them to give us some answers, I suppose. Just give us some answers to questions that people want to know, such as why does a banker always offer you an umbrella when it's sunny and take it away when it's raining? Which is exactly what they're doing now,
Yeah. I mean, the thing that always gets me is when you talk to a lot of bank managers, they've no real idea of running something or trying to run something, or the pressures on it. And I've had this for years with local authorities, NHS, anything like that. And back when I used to be an accountant, I used to do councils, NHS trusts and other things like that, auditing. And they had all these budgets and they had all this stuff and they huffed and puffed. But the bottom line was, if they needed it, they got it. And there was no issue with it. And if things were getting close to their year end, and they had money left, it was, how do we put this into something so that we can make this at least the same claim again next year for our funding? And it was... And they always spoke of, we've got to do this for the taxpayers' money. So every time they did it, I said, never mind the general taxpayers' money. Would you put your hand in your pocket and pay for that? And I never met anyone that said yes. I said, well, then it can't be a good scheme. If you wouldn't do it yourself, you're a taxpayer. Why would anyone else want to do it? Yeah. Oh, well, they don't understand this and that. And as soon as they start off with that, you just know. Right, this is basically horse shit. You're trying to cover it, and that's how it was. But there you go. Yeah, let's see if we go on, banker. Come on, bankers, you bankers, come on.
Yeah, get it there.
If you feel like you can take Ray on, because I'm the nice one, see if you can take Ray on in another episode of the How to Raise Money podcast with him,
Ray McLennan,
and me, Nigel T. Best. All right, folks. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to the How to Raise Money podcast. It's made for people who want to raise money as debt or investment equity for their business or property proposal or empire. The website has all the useful links and underlying research, and you can get downloads of the checklists and other useful information. See you next time, where we can show you how to raise money. There is abundance. There is money enough for everyone on the planet. The question is, who has yours?